Asia, good evening America. You're watching World DNA with me, Raisha Sehgal.
And I'm Him Korsara, and on the show today, the FBI has released new details about the deadly attack in New Orleans' famed Bourbon Street. Now, according to the officials, the suspect acted alone. There is no definitive connection between the attack in New Orleans and the Tesla Cybertruck explosion outside Trump's hotel in Las Vegas. So we will be tracking all the developments on that front on the show today.
Also on the show today, UNSC will convene today for an emergency meeting to discuss Israel's recent raid on the Kamal Adwan hospital in northern Gaza. Israel says that it targeted the hospital after Hamas militants began operating in and around the site. Meanwhile, an Israeli delegation is all set to resume ceasefire talks in Doha. We will be tracking all that is happening in West Asia, but first, a quick check on the headlines.
The FBI says U.S. Army veteran Shamsuddin Jabbar, who pledged allegiance to Islamic State, likely acted alone when he killed 14 and injured dozens in a truck attack on a crowd of New Year's revelers in New Orleans.
We're going to continue to relentlessly pursue ISIS and other terrorist organizations where they are, and they'll find no safe harbor here.
US President Joe Biden says ISIS will not find safe harbor in the US as the country will pursue others terrorist groups as well.
U.S. authorities say the decorated Special Forces soldier who blew up Tesla Cybertruck outside Trump International Hotel in Las Vegas shot himself in the head before the blast. His motivation is still unknown.
One dead and 15 others injured as a small plane crashes through rooftop of a commercial building in Southern California. Police and fire authorities arrive on scene to battle the blaze and evacuate surrounding businesses.
Zelensky says U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's unpredictability could help end the war with Russia, calls Trump very strong and unpredictable in an interview with Ukrainian TV.
Israeli airstrikes kill at least 43 Palestinians across Gaza. Medics claim 11 people in a tent encampment sheltering displaced families were among those killed.
War Monitor says Israel bombed Syrian army positions south of Aleppo, targeting defense and research facilities. Residents report hearing at least 7 massive explosions in the area.
South Korean investigators seeking to arrest impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol confronted by security service members at his residence after an earlier standoff with a military unit.
Jasprit Bumrah leads India instead of Rohit Sharma in the Sydney Test against Australia. The pacer said that Sharma has shown leadership by opting to rest in this game.
Our top focus on WION right now. US President Joe Biden has stated that the suspect in the New Year's Day attack in New Orleans had pledged allegiance to the Islamic State and acted alone.
Now, the driver, identified as Shamsuddin Jabbar, a 42-year-old U.S. Army veteran from Texas, drove his truck into a crowd celebrating New Year's killing at least 15 people and injuring over 30.
As I said yesterday, the attacker posted several videos just several hours before the attack, indicating his strong support for ISIS. Federal law enforcement and the intelligence community are actively investigating any foreign or domestic contacts and connections that could possibly be relevant to the attack. And so we're also continuing to investigate whether or not there's any connection between the New Orleans attack and the explosion in Las Vegas. As of now, they've just been briefed. They have not found any evidence of such a connection thus far.
Meanwhile, the FBI, in collaboration with local law enforcement, is actively probing the deadly attack. The FBI has revealed that the attacker had published videos on social media proclaiming support for the Islamic State group. The counter-terrorism official further revealed that they recovered 3 phones and 2 IEDs devices from him.
This was an act of terrorism. It was premeditated and an evil act. This was obviously a critical incident, and with that, lots of information and tips come pouring in from law enforcement, first responders, and the public. We have been aggressively running down these tips and information. As you all know, that takes time, and we will continue to do so until every lead has been followed through on. Currently, and this is another fact I want to be clear on, we do not assess at this point that anyone else involved in this attack except for Shamsuddin Jabbar, the subject you've already been briefed on.
As the investigation continues, Bourbon Street reopened in less than 36 hours after the attack. The reopening coincided with the Sugar Bowl college football game, which had been postponed due to the attack. Authorities have increased security measures in the area to ensure public safety as locals and visitors return to this iconic part of the French Quarter.
Today feels like a completely normal day back on Bourbon Street. Obviously think about all the victims and the families, but I feel safe. I think it's probably the safest and cleanest Bourbon Street will ever be that I will see. And just still praying for the victims, and I feel safe, and the police presence is huge, so I feel great out here.
And well, for more on this, our correspondent Susan Tehrani joined us earlier with more details. We asked her how New Orleans attack highlighted the threat of Islamic State and how it would impact U.S. national security priorities. Take a listen.
Terrorism experts say that the New Orleans terror attack underscores the persistent threat posed by the Islamic State, and that this incident may force a reassessment of U.S. national security priorities, which have recently been focused on Russia and China. Also, experts are warning that the ongoing turmoil in the Middle East region, coupled with the Islamic State's ability to inspire lone wolf attackers, necessitates a renewed focus on counterterrorism efforts here in the United States. Also, given the attack's characteristics such as the use of vehicle ramming tactics and the suspect's struggle in his personal life, really makes it clear that Islamic State propaganda continues to resonate with vulnerable individuals.
Now, we also asked her how New Orleans attack fits into the broader context of Islamic State's evolution and the global jihadist movement. Listen to this.
That the New Orleans attack is consistent with the Islamic State's methods of operation, which often involves attacking public pedestrians to maximize casualties. The tactic has been employed in previous attacks as well, like the one in Nice, France, here in New York, where I am, and also in Barcelona, Spain. Now, experts also note that the Islamic State's ability to inspire attacks like this one has persisted despite its military defeat back in 2019.
Now, the deadly attack in New Orleans on New Year's Day has opened the floodgates to a larger political conversation, and that's around immigration in the United States. And this narrative, it's being championed by none other than U.S. President-elect Donald Trump.
Right, Haim. Well, shortly after the attack on early Wednesday morning, Donald Trump posted a message on his social media platform, Truth Social. The message said, and I'm quoting, "Criminals coming in are far worse than criminals we have in our country. Trump administration will fully support the city of New Orleans as they probe and recover from this pure act of evil.
Now, the president-elect made an assumption of the attacker being an immigrant long before law enforcement and investigating agencies revealed the attacker's identity, and his number 2, J.D. Vance, was quick to share the post, echoing the same sentiment.
It was only hours after Trump's statement that the attacker was identified as Shamsuddin Jabbar, a 42-year-old U.S. Army veteran and not an illegal immigrant or an undocumented worker.
The subject has been identified as 42-year-old Shamsuddin Jabbar, a U.S.-born citizen from Texas. He was driving a Ford pickup truck, which appears to be rented, and we are working to confirm how the subject became in possession of this vehicle. An ISIS flag was located on the trailer hitch of the vehicle, and the FBI is working to determine the subject's potential associations and affiliations with terrorist organizations. Weapons and potential improvised explosive devices, IEDs, were located in the subject's vehicle. Other potential IEDs were also located in the French Quarter. As of now, 2 IEDs have been found and rendered safe.
According to the Pentagon, Jabbar served more than 10 years in the military as a human resource specialist and an IT specialist. Jabbar was also deployed to Afghanistan from 2009 to 2010. He held a degree in computing from Georgia State University and lived in Houston, Texas, where he'd worked as a real estate agent. An older YouTube video surfaced on social media where Jabbar was seen introducing himself as a property manager from Texas.
Well, there are other right-wing lawmakers who floated an anti-immigrant narrative after the attack in New Orleans, which killed 10 people and injured scores of others. Republican leader from Texas, Wesley Hunt, was quick to tweet about enemies infiltrating U.S. borders, slamming the Biden administration for its failure to control the crisis.
Another Republican congressional leader, Marjorie Taylor Greene, echoed Trump's narrative, alleging that America's borders have been left wide open. Her tweet also pins the blame on immigrants for the attack.
The narrative around immigration in U.S. and the border crisis is worrying people about the future under Trump's presidency. The returning president, who will be sworn in on January 20th, based much of his presidential campaign on the issue of immigration, often calling immigrants names and falsely accusing them of being most responsible for crimes in the country. Law enforcement officials have identified a U.S. Army soldier from Colorado as the likely person inside a Tesla Cybertruck that exploded outside the Trump International Hotel in Las Vegas.
Now, this incident was initially thought of as a terror attack as it took place hours after the New Orleans mass carnage. On Thursday, the FBI stated that it has yet to uncover any conclusive connection between the tragic New Year's Day truck attack in New Orleans, which claimed 15 lives, and the explosion of a Cybertruck in Las Vegas.
As I was crossing, I saw that there was a car on fire outside the hotel, and there were no police. There was nothing. There were only 2 employees who did not know what was happening. I soon picked up my phone and started filming and said that there was a fire in front of the hotel. It was then that I realized that it had just started like 5 minutes before.
Officials believe Matthew Livsberger, a 37-year-old active duty Army soldier from Colorado Springs, was inside the vehicle when it exploded and that he acted alone. He sustained a self-inflicted gunshot wound on his head just before the explosion, with a handgun found at his feet. 2 semi-automatic handguns, both legally purchased just days prior, were discovered in the Cybertruck alongside military identification and personal belongings. His body was severely burnt, making immediate identification impossible. However, authorities are awaiting DNA evidence and medical records for confirmation. Now, this was assigned to the Army Special Operations Command and was approved
on approved leave at the time of his death, while he had earned commendations for his service, including a Bronze Star for valor. Authorities have not yet established a clear motive for the incident.
He just, I'm sorry, I don't know what to say. He seemed like a normal guy. Yeah, you know, like when I would he had a dog, you know, and we would always come out together at the same time, it seemed like, and he'd say hi and sorry. And yeah, he seemed normal. His wife is very nice. They just had a baby.
And the war in Gaza has been ongoing for almost 15 months now, and the death toll continues to mount.
In the past 24 hours, Israeli airstrikes have killed at least 43 Palestinians across the territory. This includes 11 people in a tent encampment sheltering displaced families. The camp in the Al-Mawasi district was designated as a humanitarian zone for civilians. But the Israeli military says it followed international law and took feasible precautions to mitigate civilian harm. The IDF has accused Hamas militants of using built-up residential areas for cover, which the group denies.
6 others were killed in another Israeli airstrike on the Interior Ministry headquarters in Khan Yunis. Rescuers were seen clearing rubble following the attack. It damaged tents, which could be seen nearby. The IDF says it had targeted Hamas militants who were operating in a command and control center embedded inside the municipality building in the humanitarian area.
I was sitting with the children and my brother's wife in the area when we suddenly saw something fall. It turned the entire area into dust, took away the tents and the entire area. We were screaming. I did not know where my children were or where my wife was. I started running like crazy. There I found a man lying. His head was cut off. And here we found children thrown inside the tents and dead. Human flesh was scattered on the streets, hands and legs.
After Israel's recent raid of the Kamal Adwan hospital in northern Gaza, the UNSC is set to meet for an emergency meeting to discuss the raid. However, no practical implications are expected from the meeting. Israel says it targeted the hospital after Hamas militants once again began operating in and around the site.
As the attacks intensify, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has authorized Israeli negotiators to continue talks in Doha on a hostage deal. Indirect negotiations mediated by Qatar, Egypt and the United States have taken place in Doha in recent weeks, rekindling hope for a ceasefire and hostage release agreement. But since then, the two sides have accused each other of blocking the deal yet again.
Netanyahu's statement came as he was discharged from the hospital 4 days after he underwent prostate removal surgery. Meanwhile, the Israeli military continues to strike Hezbollah rocket launchers in southern Lebanon despite a fragile ceasefire in place. The truce took effect on November 27th and has been marked by mutual accusations of violations from both the sides. Israel insists that it is acting to remove any threat in accordance with the ceasefire understandings.
Now, supporters of South Korea's impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol are out on the streets outside his residence in Seoul,
where the embattled leader remains holed up defying of an arrest warrant. Tensions are running high around presidential residence in Seoul as investigators are making cautious attempts to arrest Yoon. Well, earlier, Yoon's supporters and the police were involved in a brawl outside his residence.
Yoon's supporters are camping in front of his residence round the clock ever since a Seoul court issued an arrest warrant against him. In the midst of the rally, Yoon delivered a one-page message to his supporters and vowed to fight till the end.
Yoon Suk-yeol has defied multiple summons by anti-corruption authorities. The current arrest warrant against him will expire on January 6th. The head of the country's corruption watchdog has vowed to execute the arrest before the warrant expires.
Yoon is wanted for questioning in multiple investigations related to his December 3rd martial law decree, including accusations of leading an insurrection. a crime punishable by life imprisonment or even the death penalty. WION's legal team have filed for an injunction to block the warrant and called it an unlawful and invalid act.
In other global news, China has announced a major move to ban the export of dual-use products to 28 US defense contractors.
Also, while placing 10 in a list of unreliable entities over Washington's arms sales to Taiwan.
While China's Ministry of Commerce says the move aims to maintain national security and fulfill international obligations, including non-proliferation.
This list includes industry giants like Lockheed Martin, Raytheon and Boeing Defense. These 28 companies are crucial to the US military and airspace sectors. China's move comes after Washington's continued arms sales to Taiwan that Beijing views as a threat to its national sovereignty. Among the affected companies are 10 firms, including multiple subsidiaries of Lockheed Martin and General Dynamics and a joint venture between Lockheed Martin and Raytheon. This action is part of China's effort to safeguard its national security and uphold its One China policy.
These companies have also been added to China's unreliable entities list. That means they will face severe trade restrictions. They will not be able to engage in import-export activities with China, and their executives will be barred from entering the country. This move underlines the deepening tensions between the US and China over Taiwan. Now, Beijing considers the island as a part of its own territory, and it sees the US arming Taiwan as a serious challenge to its sovereignty.
Now, in response to China's sanctions, US defense firms face a major setback. The sales of military technology to Taiwan that include air defense systems and fighter jets are critical to American strategic interests in the Pacific.
Well, as China slaps all these sanctions, the impact is being felt by both the countries. The US defense industry is now facing a potential loss of business with one of the world's largest economies, while China strengthens its position on the global stage.
And a court in Bangladesh on Thursday denied bail to Chinmoy Krishnadas Brahmachari, a former ISKCON monk, during a hearing held under tight security.
Chattogram Metropolitan Sessions Judge MD Saiful Islam rejected the bail plea after hearing arguments from both the sides for around 30-odd minutes. Now, Apurva Kumar Bhattacharjee, a lawyer representing Chinmoy Krishnadas, also known as Prabhu, said that they would appeal the decision.
The court rejected an earlier request for bail made when Prabhu did not have lawyers. Lawyers who sought to represent him at the hearing said that they were threatened or intimidated.
Many of them are now facing charges related to the death of a Muslim lawyer during clashes outside the court when Prabhu appeared there shortly after his arrest in November. Well, for Thursday's hearing, 11 lawyers travelled from Dhaka, arriving and leaving with a security escort.
Meanwhile, media reports indicate that Bangladesh is rewriting history literally, with new textbooks stating that Zia Rahman had declared the country's independence in 1971.
The new books replace previous ones that credit the founding father, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, with making the declaration of independence. Media reports say that the new textbooks for primary and secondary students have several changes that include removing the title Father of the Nation for Mujibur Rahman. The new textbooks will come into effect from the 2025 academic year.
All right, with that, it's time now for a short break, but let's take a look at all of the climate stories that are making headlines across the globe. Stay tuned, we'll be back shortly.
understand better, think ahead. Hello and a very warm welcome. You are watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Get the facts, not the bombast. On the 26th of March, dynamic pricing, Baloch separatists, Gravitas cuts out the clutter. Gravitas keeps calm when others scream. Gravitas brings news to life. Weekdays, 9 p.m. IST, 3:30 p.m. GMT. Gravitas. Seeing is believing.
This week on the West Asia Post, as 2025 dawns, Iran's supreme leader says resistance will emerge victorious in Yemen and Lebanon. Houthis take up the fight with the US and Israeli forces, target Israeli airport and power facilities. 30 days into the ceasefire in Lebanon, what does Lebanon's future look like? Also on the show, we dive deep into Syria's election plans. Watch the West Asia Post with me, Radi Francis, only on WION. The World is One.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
Welcome back to World DNA. Thank you so much for staying with us. Lots lined up for you on this side of the show. Let's get started with the headlines first.
Media reports claim White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan presented US President Joe Biden with options for a potential US attack on Iran's nuclear facilities if the Iranians move towards a nuclear weapon before January 20th.
Two dead and 18 injured after a small plane crashes through rooftop of a commercial building in Southern California. Firefighters and police battle a blaze and evacuate surrounding businesses.
FBI says US Army veteran Shamsuddin Jabbar, who pledged allegiance to Islamic State, likely acted alone when he killed 14 and injured dozens in a truck attack on a crowd of New Year revelers in New Orleans.
U.S. authorities say the decorated Special Forces soldier who blew up Tesla Cybertruck outside Trump International Hotel in Las Vegas shot himself in the head before the blast. His motivation still unknown.
Zelensky says U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's unpredictability could help end the war with Russia, calls Trump very strong and unpredictable in an interview with Ukrainian TV.
Israeli airstrikes kill at least 43 Palestinians across Gaza. Medics claim 11 people in a tent encampment sheltering displaced families were among those killed.
War Monitor says Israel bombed Syrian army positions south of Aleppo, targeting defense and research facilities. Residents report hearing at least 7 massive explosions in the area.
South Korean investigators seeking to arrest impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol confronted by security service members at his residence after an earlier standoff with a military unit.
Jasprit Bumrah leads India instead of Rohit Sharma in the Sydney Test against Australia. The pacer said that Sharma has shown leadership by opting to rest in this game.
All right, and Russia and Ukraine continue to launch drone attacks against each other.
Well, according to their daily military briefings, the Russian Air Defense Unit shot down over 30 drones of Ukraine in regions including Belgorod, Kursk, Voronezh, Bryansk and Rostov. The Russian Federal Air Transport Agency announced temporary control at airports in Kaluga, Saransk, Penza and Saratov region. While the Ukrainian Air Force said that Russian military since Tuesday night launched 111 drones with 63 taken down. The National Bank of Ukraine reported one of its buildings caught fire after drone debris fell on it. The fire was later put out. The bank is in normal operation as of now.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Zelensky has expressed hope in an interview that U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's unpredictability could help end the war with Russia. Zelensky said Trump is very strong and unpredictable, and he would really like to see Trump's unpredictability apply to Russia, as the U.S. President-elect really wants to end the war.
Trump, who takes office on January 20th, has said he will end the nearly 3-year-long war in 24 hours once in power. His claim has drawn skepticism from Kyiv, which fears it will be forced to give up land for peace. However, Zelensky has sought to build bridges with Trump and his team since November's election amid fears that the Republican could slow the important U.S. military aid or halt it entirely.
In other development, Ukraine has opened a criminal probe into desertion and abuse of power after hundreds of soldiers were reported to have fled an army unit partly trained by France. The 155th Mechanized Brigade, dubbed Anne of Kiev, was one of several military groupings formed last year as Ukraine sought to boost preparations for possible new Russian offensives. The unit was to be made up of 4,500 soldiers, with France training roughly half of them and providing equipment. It was reported in December that 1,700 soldiers had fled the brigade without going into combat and that 50 had escaped while training in France.
Furthermore, Ukrainian court sentenced a man to 15 years in prison for passing information to Moscow that could have helped it target missile strikes. Kyiv has opened thousands of probes against Ukrainians suspected of collaboration with Russian forces since Moscow launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Moving on, the tussle between European Union and its member state, Hungary, has escalated. In a first, the bloc has officially denied €1 billion worth of funds to the country.
The European Union said it was withholding funds due to corruption in the country, and this is the first time that the EU has made such a decision. The move comes over 6 months after a European Commission report from July said Hungary did not meet the democratic standards of the bloc, particularly in areas of corruption, political financing, conflicts of interest and media independence.
The proceedings against Hungary began 2 years ago. In 2022, European Union decided to begin the process of blocking funds after allegations of interference in public procurement as well as a lack of control and transparency surfaced. However, Hungarian authorities they've said to have made some changes and implemented reforms, allowing EU to subsequently unblock some funds. However, funds worth $20 billion still remain frozen.
Now, Hungary's President Viktor Orbán has repeatedly slammed the bloc for holding back funds. Back in December, the leader promised to fight for protecting the money that Orbán said belongs to the country. The Hungarian leader has accused EU of taking funds away from his country and threatened to veto the alliance's budget.
Viktor Orbán has also been one of the fiercest critics among the 27 member states of EU with respect to the bloc's military assistance and funding to Ukraine as it fights a long drawn-out war with Russia.
The latest tussle with the EU adds to Viktor Orbán's troubles as Hungary grapples with economic issues. There are also many political challenges mounting for the incumbent leader.
Well, on Wednesday, Orbán's political rival Peter Magyar called for early legislative elections in the country. Elections, as per schedule, are due to be held in the first half of 2026. But many opinion polls, they are currently showing that the opposition party in the lead gave mileage to Orbán's rivals to push for snap polls.
Morális, politikai és gazdasági válságban.
And in Pakistan, a second round of talks is concluded between the government and members of the opposition party, PTI.
The meeting was held at 3:30 p.m. local time. A third meeting will now be held next week, while the negotiations between both the sides were chaired by National Assembly Speaker Ayaz Sadiq. Lawmakers from jailed ex-Prime Minister Imran Khan's party have reportedly placed some demands in front of the government representatives. And one of the main demands is the release of the PTI leaders in jail. The party also wants the cases pertaining to the May 9th and November 26th demonstrations to be probed by a judicial commission.
Now, the talks began last month as an effort to diffuse political tensions and bring about greater stability in the country. Sunni Ittihad Council, an ally of the PTI, had earlier said its representatives will give January 31st as the deadline to conclude the negotiations and reach a consensus.
Ahead of the second meeting, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa Chief Minister Ali Amin Gandapur said that the party was ready to initiate another round of demonstrations if the ongoing discussions with the government failed.
PTI and the government have been at loggerheads for months now. The Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf Party has held several rallies in protest demanding the release of its party founder and former Prime Minister Imran Khan from jail.
67 convicted individuals have submitted mercy petitions as per Army's statement, and I quote, 48 petitions are processed to courts of appeal, while petitions of 19 convicts have been accepted purely on humanitarian grounds in accordance with law. Well, in India's national capital, a social media war has begun between political parties as assembly elections come closer.
While the Election Commission is yet to announce the date, polls are supposed to be held in February this year, with the political landscape heating up and the BJP and Aam Aadmi Party locked in a poster war of sorts, with former Chief Minister and AAP Chief Arvind Kejriwal at the centre of this political battle. Take a look. Shifting our focus now, as part of its grand strategy to restore stability in its war-torn economy and entice international investment, Syria is contemplating legalizing Bitcoin and the digitization of the Syrian pound.
Well, the Syrian Center for Economic Research came up with this plan. The SCER seeks to use blockchain technology and the adoption of cryptocurrencies to tackle economic instability, inflation, and also financial marginalization.
Now, the Syrian economy has been decimated by years of conflict and poor management, with a 60% reduction in its GDP since 2010. This according to the World Bank. People no longer have faith in conventional financial institutions due to the significant depreciation of the Syrian pound and the accompanying inflation.
The SCER addresses this by outlining a comprehensive plan that includes digitalization of the Syrian pound using a blockchain technology and the legalization of Bitcoin for financial transactions, trading and even mining. This strategy hopes to stabilize the currency by using assets such as gold, US dollars and Bitcoin as support.
Now, Syria could also prioritize sustainability and anti-monopoly efforts by mining Bitcoin utilizing its undeveloped energy resources. Cryptocurrency is already in use in Syria. Allegedly, opposition groups like HTS have utilized Bitcoin as a source of finance. Some worry that crypto might be misused despite the SCER's strategy, which aims to legitimize and control crypto usage.
The plan calls for the central bank to keep a close eye on the digital assets industry in a bid to make sure everything is open, safe and also accountable. Legalizing Bitcoin has the potential to provide substantial advantages to Syria. Millions of Syrians depend on money sent from outside for their livelihood, and this would make remittances much easier. El Salvador's financial ecosystem benefited from the legalization of cryptos. The Syrian government could follow a similar strategy as El Salvador's financial ecosystem, which benefited from the legalization of cryptos, like I just mentioned. The IMF and the World Bank have raised alarms on the growing debt crisis gripping global economies. With a record national debt of $36 trillion, the U.S. is confronted with a debt catastrophe.
Donald Trump faces a significant debt risk as he returns to the White House. Here's a report as we decode if America is heading for bankruptcy.
America's debt to GDP ratio is poised to surpass 200%, threatening the economy from the increasing debt load. Trump's proposal to reduce government spending is significant for the nation's economic future. The president-elect's plan is being spearheaded by Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy under DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. This strategy could encounter obstacles as a result of increasing interest rates and the expenses of debt servicing. With a $2 trillion rise in 2024 alone, the United States national debt has hit a new high of $36 trillion. Since a large chunk of the budget goes towards paying off debt, it is a huge roadblock to Trump's lofty policy objectives. The United States debt has increased at an exponential rate, from $5.7 trillion at the beginning of the century to $23.2 trillion by 2020. A record-breaking rise of over $16 trillion since the COVID-19 pandemic has added to those woes. An average American now shoulders a debt burden of about $108,000. With the US debt exceeding 125% of the country's GDP, the situation is deteriorating rapidly. Experts predict the US debt to GDP ratio will reach 200% in the next few years. Other top economies face a similar threat. Japan is the other major economy with a high ratio. The ratio for Japan is nearly 170%. However, Japanese debt is held by domestic investors, lowering the risks somewhat. In Europe, Italy and France have the highest debt to GDP ratio of over 130%. Germany has the least in the region at about 47%, and the United Kingdom's ratio is over 100%. India and China have lower ratios relative to their developed peers. India's debt to GDP ratio stands at a touch over 80%, while China's is a little more than 90%. as the global debt surged to a record $323 trillion by the third quarter of 2024. The risks associated with sovereign debt are rising. The biggest threat is to emerging markets, which face the reality of a financial crisis. Global interest payments have also increased to a record of about 4 times surge over the last decade. While the debt is alarming, some economists argue that it doesn't necessarily need to be paid off. They point out that unlike individuals, governments don't have to close their debt. Instead, they can issue new bonds to pay off old ones, essentially rolling over the debt. As long as the debt grows in line with economic output and tax revenues, it can be sustained. However, soaring debt payments squeeze budgets for health and education. As seen in recent years, financial crisis and debt default threats are also a real risk. Future generations may face higher taxes or reduced services to manage the fiscal imbalances. Business Bureau, WION World is One.
Let's now see all the news from the world of technology. Well, quitting smoking just got smarter, literally. Researchers at the University of Bristol have developed a smartwatch app that detects smoking gestures using motion sensors. When it spots a puff, the watch vibrates and displays supportive messages like "quitting is good" or a tally of daily cigarettes smoked. The app aims to step in right when people are most vulnerable to relapse. During a trial, participants found the app extremely helpful. However, they have demanded for more motivating messages on the app.
Malaysia's communications regulator has granted operating licenses to Tencent's WeChat and ByteDance's TikTok under a new social media law aimed at combating rising cybercrime. The law, which came into effect on the 1st of January, requires platforms with more than 8 million users in Malaysia to obtain a license or face legal action.
While both Telegram and Meta platforms applications are in the process of completion, Elon Musk's X has not applied for the license yet. X has claimed that its local user base is below the 8 million threshold, a claim that is being reviewed by the Malaysian government.
As per reports, while WeChat has 12 million users in Malaysia, TikTok is over 28 million users. A lime quarry in UK's Oxfordshire has thrown up evidence of life forms that roamed the earth nearly 166 million years ago.
No less than 200 large dinosaur footprints have been found, making it the biggest site of its kind in the UK. The footprints on the limestone floor are thought to have been made by 2 types of dinosaurs, the herbivorous Cetosaurus and the carnivorous Megalosaurus.
We have very few places in the UK where you can go and see dinosaur footprints. So this is by far the largest dinosaur track site anywhere in the UK. It's actually one of the largest dinosaur track sites anywhere in the world. And it has these incredibly long dinosaur trackways. So some of these are stretching well over 150 metres. So this is really unusual. We don't find these this kind of preservation, these very extensive trackways very commonly. So it's a really special place.
A team of more than 100 scientists, students and volunteers found 5 trackways. 4 are believed to have been made by sauropods, plant-eating dinosaurs that walked on 4 legs. The longest trackways are 150 meters in length and only part of the quarry has been excavated.
Another track is believed to have been created by a megalosaur, a carnivorous dinosaur that walked on 2 legs. The latter had 3 toes clearly indicated in the print. The discovery comes years after a similar one in the same place in 1997 when a trackway of megalosaur footprints was unearthed at the quarry in Oxfordshire. On the world of sports now. Rohit Sharma's test career seems all but over. The Indian captain is not playing the series finale against Australia in Sydney after a string of poor performances.
Jasprit Bumrah is leading the side, and he said that Sharma has shown leadership by opting out. The indication that Sharma was going to miss out was an open secret after head coach Gautam Gambhir refused to confirm the captain's availability in the pre-match press conference. The 37